Hello and welcome to The Foretop. It's a roundtable discussion of today's hot button topics in food and beverage. I'm your host, Catherine Cole. In episode 61, we are going to learn about the ways in which cooking and eating well are more accessible to more people than ever, thanks to innovation and technology. But first, let's go around and meet our panelists. Here in the studios of OPB, we have Dr. Reva Barewal, a specialist in full mouth reconstruction, a clinical assistant professor at OHSU, that's Oregon Health Sciences University, and also a French culinary chef who is the founder of Savories, an innovative new line of real foods for people who are unable to chew or swallow due to medical conditions. Welcome, Reva.
Thank you.
And Drew Prindle, senior editor at Digital Trends and an expert on the future of food. So good to have you back, Drew.
It's always a pleasure being here.
And Alexis Hillyard, founder of Stump Kitchen, a website and YouTube series that Vice magazine described as the disability cooking show food media needs. Alexis, we're so pleased to have you.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
And you are our first beamed-in guest ever, so this is really exciting for us.
All the way from Canada.
All the way from Canada.
Canada.
We're so happy you're here.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It's great.
Well, let's just jump right into our first course. Dr. Reva Barewal, you are the inventor of Savories, a new line of truly innovative foods that are allowing many people who probably thought they might never be able to eat again the chance to feed themselves. So can you start off and just describe the community of people you're serving with Savories and then tell us a little bit about your product?
Yeah, great. So I think that the idea of not being able to swallow is really hard to swallow. It's a really hard thing to contemplate. And I just put it out there that all of us have choked on our food at one point in our lives. And the feelings, the emotions that are associated with that can be anxiety, can be fear, can be embarrassment. And I want everyone to just think about having that sensation every time you eat. Maybe it might be for months, it could be years, or it could be the rest of your life. And you think that that can't be that many people, but it's really 25 million in the U.S. today and growing. Wow. And the reasons are because the aging population is growing, and we are doing medical technology to increased length of life. I mean, we've doubled it since the turn of the century, 1900s, right? So now people are having to manage their illness. And this is like stroke and dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, ALS, head and neck cancer. It just goes on. And all of these conditions can have a consequence of not being able to swallow. So I decided to look into this because it fell into the purview of my patients. And I just realized that these people were not able to enjoy their food. And I was reconstructing their mouths and making them able to chew, but then downstream they can't swallow. So, they're not enjoying their food. They're becoming malnourished. There's big issues happening. So I put on my French culinary hat. And I'd have to say I partnered with some really amazing people in Portland and actually all over. And we designed the first ever food that crunches and dissolves instantly in the mouth to puree. So they get the texture back that they've been missing and craving, but in real food form. So we are not doing liquid supplements. We are not putting sugar in people where sugar is an inflammatory food. And it just is so paradoxical that we're giving this to people to help them heal when in fact it's an inflammatory food. And we decided to remove sodium, remove sugar, provide real food, and make them have a seat at the table again so that everyone would want to eat that it doesn't look like medical food. It looks like crackers and dip. It looks like soup. It looks really inviting and nurturing, satiating, and covering their cravings.
So let me back you up a little bit. So the only options available to these people right now is something like Ensure? Is that what?
Yeah. So right now, if I've done studies galore of what's available in nursing homes, okay, we can just take that. And if you can't swallow and you're a diabetic, you're faced with, some forms of applesauce, yogurt, and a liquid supplement for the rest of your life. That's your snack. that's what you get.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's not that they don't want to feed the individuals. It's just that there's no choice. There's no availability. So their hands are tied. And then the person is getting burnt out. They're tired of Neapolitan flavored foods. They craved crunchy. I mean, when we think of our snacks, they're all crunchy, right? I mean, how many times do we grab a pudding when we want a snack? So that food memory is gone. The cravings start up. The refusal to eat is a huge problem. And then they cheat. And they grab pretzels, and they are willing to sacrifice the risk of choking on their food in order to satiate their craving because they're tired of being denied. And that's the passion behind the process of figuring out an innovative solution.
Wow. So what kind of foods are we talking here? I know you mentioned like crackers and soup. What other kind of things are on the menu, so to speak?
So I decided that most people and families are really focused on breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I decided to say, if I'm going to prevent malnutrition for this group of folks, I'm going to go for those snack times. And so I started with crackers. I have pea, carrot, and chicken crackers. And the dips, there's no ethnic diversity in snacks for the elderly in this kind of environment. So I created shelf-stable hummus and shelf-stable black bean dip. And so crackers and dip combination equals 1 can of Ensure as far as your nutritional value. And then we created soup. We did nurturing studies like people, Portland, it's cold and rainy. You might not want a cold shake, right?
Yeah.
So we decided to find out what they're craving and what's nurturing. So we made a roasted tomato soup, a squash apple curry soup, and a chicken herb soup. And that's just the beginning, because I really feel like I want this to start a movement and have other people get interested to really shake it up, because I think the elderly deserve it.
So, Reva, when you talk about the soups, I think some people will be thinking, well, why can't I just open a can of tomato soup? So what is the difference in terms of the savory soups? Are they higher in nutrition?
Yeah.
And is the consistency different?
Yeah. So when we think of someone who can't swallow, just imagine every bite you take is slower, more methodical, and you're eating less. So you have to densify. I know that's not a word, but you have to make it a lot more dense. So what I did was I made dry soup blends that they could put into their purse. They could go to a restaurant where maybe they can't eat anything on the menu, but they can pull out their dry soup blend, ask for some warm water, shake it for 2 seconds, and in 6 ounces, they're getting 13 grams of protein and 200 calories. Wow. So it's super dense. And so that's kind of the form. So the other answer to your question is there is this big change across the world. There's this new standardization for people who can't swallow, that you have to identify what the food is and what thickness it is, what's the texture. And it's pretty strict because there's so much variety and people are choking and aspirating on their food. There's inconsistency in what we think they should have. So everything that we created was verified by university professors as like, this meets this standard for having like honey consistency or nectar thick consistency. Like really, that's the old version, and I'm not going to bore you with the new version, but essentially we've targeted to know what is the most common thickness of food for people that can't swallow.
It's so funny. I was doing some research, and I did notice that the terms are honey, nectar, and pudding for consistency. Yeah. And just getting back to the idea that everyone just thinks these foods have to be sugary. It's even the standard for the consistency. Yes. Sugary foods. And you're saying, no, they can be savory. And
yes.
There's another way.
And the coolest thing is we made the first in the world transitional food. So for this group, which is crunchy food that dissolves to puree. And transitional food, they don't even have research on it. We developed the first research on it because it falls into this category. Like, what is this food? How quickly does it dissolve in the mouth? Like, how long is it going to take to reach that consistency? And there's huge, like, think of shrimp chips, right? That's a transitional food. You put in your mouth, it sucks on your tongue.
Yeah.
Like a little, I don't know, little kind of strange thing that like sucks all your moisture, but then it dissolves, right?
Or like a meringue. Of course, I'm thinking sugar
A meringue,
again.
like macaroni. So meringues, baby mums, like baby food. You can think of tons of baby food that is like first finger foods.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And there's something special about the packaging as well, isn't there? That it's easier to handle. Is that right? Or the shapes of the...
Yeah. We just, I really feel, and I think Alexis will talk more about this and Drew, but I really think that someone who's disabled, we need to think of the food they're consuming, not only from the endpoint of actually eating the food, but how that enjoyment goes from A to Z. That means taking that package of food, opening that package of food. Mm-hmm. What are the images on that package of the food? How well can they read that food? How else can we improve the packaging when all sensory stimulation might be depressed in an elderly person? So you think olfactory, you think of visual memory, right? Like the sounds of packaging is pretty cool and crazy. I heard that they spent $1 million trying to get that pop in a Snapple. Do you know that pop? Like it's amazing, but
worth every penny.
This is why we have everyone open their water before we start recording.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, but there's a lot that can be done with food enjoyment when you have sensory depletion and improve your association, your comfort, your enjoyment of the food that you're eating. So I really think that, people like Drew, like really innovating and thinking of that process, not just the end result of eating. And that's the problem with puree. It's the end result. It doesn't, there's no food memory associated with it. You don't really enjoy the experience. You're just eating. And one thing really scintillized for me. It was like, we don't eat our nutrition. We eat food. And that's where the revolution has to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I think you and I have spoken about this before, Reva. It's really a way to connect socially with your family. It's a way to connect emotionally with other people, is to sit down and have a meal, or even just a snack if you want to sit down and watch the game, and just to be able to have something you can snack on while the rest of your family's eating pretzels.
Right. And the idea of grazing and enjoying, something slowly, that is a finger food idea. It is not a, liquid supplement idea. And having something, the worst story I heard was a caregiver, offering puree to someone who had dementia, but really demonstrating through the voice, the tone, and the way that they were with the person that this is not very appealing to eat. Like, I would never eat that. And so that person's then association with that food, I mean, it's no wonder they're not enjoying it, because it's not a communal. Food is a communal event. It's a social event. And the more that we can make the food socially acceptable, and so you don't feel like you're medically isolated, the more they're going to enjoy it.
This is so exciting.
I think you were absolutely onto something. Like, I spend a lot of my time looking into like new food technologies and stuff, because I love food and I love technology. So naturally, I spend a lot of time reading about them. But I have never even heard of anybody that's trying to do something like this. Looking at food, not just from like a flavor perspective or a nutritional perspective, but the whole enchilada, like holistically. And yeah, I think that is kind of a big problem, because that's how you see a lot of companies approaching it. Is like, I mean, if you look at like Soylent, for example, have you heard of these? It's like those meal replacement shakes that are just, they taste awful. They're just goop, but they do have all of the things that you need in them, all the vitamins, minerals. But what they don't have is the things outside of that, the ritual of food, the tactile sense, the look, all of those things. Right. So yeah, it's really exciting to hear that. Yeah. Kind of starting to think about those things.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I really think that, we can't take one static point in time. Like, where are we in 2019? Like, you're looking at the 80s and 90s people, right? And what do they need? But really, it's the baby boomers. What has been their experience with food? They have more cultural diversity, right? Mm-hmm. It's not meat and potatoes for them. Mm-hmm. They're when they require help, it's going to be more of a demand. Like, no, I'm not going to have this.
I'm definitely not meat and potatoes that have been through the blender.
Yeah. So I looked at the food and created food that was for lactose intolerant, gluten intolerant, diabetics, type 2 diabetes. I created food that was for people that have high blood pressure. And what I wanted was this universality where you don't have to segregate based on your condition, that this food is accessible to all of those. And that reduces complexity for the caregiver, right? So I think you're right. I mean, I think I want a party of people to join in this like game and try and figure it out.
I mean, it's like you said, was it 25 million people that are affected by this? This is not a small community of people by any stretch. No. That's huge.
And every time I present at international meetings, it's a global issue. Like, the Japanese have the biggest aging society in the world. And what they've come up with is like little cubes of gel, essentially gelatin. And this is solid food. This is real food. So it's a game changer. And yeah, I'm excited for the future and seeing how it works, how it plays out.
Wow. Well, speaking of an international community, I think it's time to move on to our next course. Alexis Hillyard, let's talk about your international phenomenon, your YouTube series and website, Stump Kitchen. It's a series of really fun, fast-moving cooking tutorials. You also teach cooking classes, is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, all ages.
And there's something really cool and a little different about your series, which is that you do all of your cooking with one hand. So can you start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Stump Kitchen?
Absolutely. So the first thing I'll note is that I have not always been savvy in the kitchen whatsoever. Like, I literally, when I started my show Stump Kitchen 3 years ago, that's when I started to get into cooking because I had to. I was a vegetarian for most of my life. I had also been recently diagnosed with a gluten intolerance. Not celiac, thank goodness, but with a mild to medium gluten intolerance. And then I decided to make the leap to going full vegan. And when you're vegan and you don't eat gluten, it gets a little trickier to find stuff out and about, although that is changing and it's getting a lot better. But I was like, I got to cook for myself if I want to be able to eat really well day to day. And I was like working and bringing my lunch to work and, didn't want to be spending money. But I was terrified to get into the kitchen for a couple reasons. The first is that, the Food Network and all these cooking shows make cooking seem like it's this like grand adventure that you have to have all the gadgets and know all the things and like understand how food works. And I had none of that knowledge. And the second thing is I just didn't have the life practice to kind of like really know what I was doing. I had cooked here and there, but nothing major. I was born without my left hand. We still don't know why that happened. It's kind of a fun mystery. Doctors think maybe it was amniotic band syndrome, but there's lots of other reasons why people can be born with a limb difference like this. And so anyway, I found some simple recipes and started to make them in the kitchen. And I realized like right away, I loved cooking because I was able to use my stump, which is what I call my left arm. Like, people call their limb differences like so many different unique names. It's great. So I was using my stump as a literal kitchen tool, as like a potato masher, as a spatula, as a lemon juicer, like all these, just naturally. I think it was like subconsciously I didn't want to be doing extra dishes at the end of the day. So I was just like, I'll just use my body. And my partner and another pal, they just thought this was the coolest thing. And they're like, I don't think you realize how neat this is. Like, you should film this. And I was like, okay, sure. And so I just did it for fun, put out my first episode. And the rest is history. Like, I think people, they just really loved the weirdness and the realness and the diversity, and the fact that it kind of, I don't know, opened up a possibility into open more doors into what's possible in the kitchen, especially for a group of people where it's assumed that there is inability to do basic tasks.
Yeah.
But in fact, there's actually a lot of like unique and beautiful abilities and ways of doing stuff. And I'm having a blast. Like, it's so much fun. I don't know. It's a great adventure. And yeah, the community has grown. Like, I'm a small but mighty YouTuber. I don't have a large audience, but it's such a beautiful and strong community. I get messages from people and families all over the world, from Germany to Australia to the States, and families who are cooking with their kids who have a limb difference like mine, who are celebrating, and like teenagers who aren't hiding themselves anymore. They would like put their arms in their pockets because they were embarrassed or scared they'd get picked on. And so just like, I don't know, it's a beautiful community to be a part of, and it just really happened by accident. And now it's something I get to do basically full time, and I feel very lucky.
And it's so much fun to watch because you're clearly having so much fun while you're cooking.
Thank you. Yeah, I had to take an approach that if I was going to get stressed about cooking, and found out that like if I just slow down and take it at my own pace and I don't worry about making things perfect, then I could relay that to my audience. And I feel like people like that, and they got to feel more relaxed. And I've had notes from people saying like, I've been like scared to cook, but because I see you doing it, I feel okay to try making risotto or like try making a soup from scratch. And so I'm like, yeah, if I can do it, you can do it. Cause I'm a very like, I'm a lazy cook. I work hard, but I'm a lazy cook. Like, I don't go out of my way, and I hate doing dishes. Like, I'm just like the regular average cook in the kitchen. But I just kind of, I don't know, I let my stump kind of take the lead and see what I can do. And especially I love it when I bring on kiddos who also have a limb difference like me, who, are missing a hand or an arm, and we get to explore techniques together, like a can opener. And actually, you know what, Reva, like speaking about like packaging and stuff earlier,
Yeah.
I was filming an episode with one of my regulars. Her name is Callie. She's lovely. We were filming an episode yesterday, actually, and we were opening this box of popsicle sticks that we were using in our recipe. And it was in this like plastic cellophane wrapper, and then it was taped shut, and then it had another packaging inside. And so here's Callie just like, why on earth, like, would you have to do all this? And like, so you have two people each with just one hand each, just like trying to like rip into this box. It was just so unnecessary. So I think the packaging thing is like such an important part of cooking. Like, as you were talking, I was thinking like, okay, when I go grocery shopping, I actually like subconsciously and more consciously now, I pick things that are more easy to open, and I don't even realize it. Like, I'm not going to grab something that doesn't have a handle, or like has, even bags that like, how you can have resealable bags that like you can open and then reseal them with a little plastic seal. I hate those because you can't get them open again. But like something like a bread bag with a little twister thing, those are a little bit easier. Large jars versus small jars. So yeah, it's just a lot of things to consider there.
Yeah. Potato chips should not be a two-hand procedure. Like, we need
Absolutely
to change
not.
that.
That's right. I use my mouth all the time, and it's probably not
And we
good for my
can't use our
teeth, but I don't care. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's a lot of things.
Yeah.
I mean, I just love everything about Stump Kitchen, but getting back to the theme of today, it strikes me that you've created this beautiful international community through innovation and technology, because actually I was going to ask you about this, Drew. Alexis's phenomenon would not exist without YouTube. I mean,
Yeah.
do you, I don't know what my question is, but I mean, I'm thinking like, we always talk about how negative social media is, but this is clearly a beautiful, positive story.
This is definitely one of the upsides of the internet, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like even just like 15, 20 years ago, the best way to share recipes and stuff was through books. And like, you would have to go like to a library or something, or borrow one from your grandma, and it would just be text. Like, there were hardly even any pictures in recipe books until recently. But now that we have the internet, and beyond just the internet, we also have the tools to make good videos now. And that just opens up so many doors, because instead of just communicating food through one medium, through just text, now we can, you can show it happening. You can show your kitchen. You can show the personality behind it. And that just makes it so much more fun and inviting. And I think that's going to work wonders for like spreading food culture and just getting more people in the kitchen, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. And I also think that like with folks with diverse bodies, folks with disabilities, there's still so much room for more and better media representation, because like TV has been around forever. But like with tools like YouTube and other mediums like that, we get to create our own content and show, who we are, how we do stuff, and find audiences of people who haven't been able to see themselves reflected in media and, on TV, etc. And so I think in that way, the community that I get to be building is like this beautiful niche of like, hey, there I am. I see myself. And it's just, it's so lovely.
And cooking seems like the perfect medium for it, because you really are celebrating your body and the way you use your body. And like you mentioned, Alexis, you said you've encountered younger folks who try to hide their, hide the way they are. And I love the way you just get it right out there and have fun with it and make use of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cooking is it's a nice leveling ground, because it gives you an activity that you can do for a short amount of time. When you're starting, when you're ending, you have steps, you have, like, if somebody's really nervous and inexperienced, they can come in and do a certain amount of tasks, like, measuring or whatever. Or if someone really wants to do like go all gung ho, then they have, more tasks that they can do. It's a real, like, I try to approach cooking in a really like all accessible kind of way, in order to meet people where they're at with their different needs.
Yeah.
It's really neat to kind of think of YouTube as a way to have someone almost see themselves in what you're doing, and therefore get acceptance, therefore get understanding. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like a relief.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember the first time I met Callie in person, and I've met people with limb differences before, but the internet brought us together through Facebook and YouTube. Like, her mom found me, and then we met each other. And the first time we met, it was about 3 years ago, and we just were instant friends. And it was like this instant understanding where I can't even explain it. It's just this beautiful thing of like, hey, I get you. And we were like cracking jokes about doing up our winter coat zippers like right away. Cause like, I don't know if you wear many winter coats in Portland, but we wear a lot up here, and doing up winter coats with one hand is a little bit frustrating and kind of funny. So it was just like a beautiful connection point. It was really nice.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Well, Reva, do you have experience through your work of video bringing communities together, the communities that you work with?
I have high aspirations to bring video to my website, which we just launched in March. So it's coming. But I have been to conferences where they're now introducing video. And what's really interesting is, if you're talking about the elderly population, a lot of this hesitancy comes from, well, are they really on the internet? Like, will they, I know that they're on Facebook, but do they know how to get to YouTube? And I'm just sitting there going, yeah. And it's going, you're talking about 100% of people, and maybe, right now, 30% aren't on the internet, but that 70%. And then when those baby boomers come up, like, it's going to be 100 again. Mm-hmm. So let's just get ourselves ready, and so the VA hospital has this cooking show where they are trying to teach healthy food habits in the kitchen and bringing that to people that need it so that they can change their diet. I just listened to a mind-blowing discussion about Parkinson's disease and how it's 70% environmental and only 30% genetic. And that's mind-blowing, right? And so we have to take a step and look at what we eat and how it affects conditions that we already have, or to prevent conditions from happening. happening. And so I really was super excited to see that they're doing this in that population, really saying, hey, you can learn something different. You know, you might have really loved meat and potatoes, but let's just throw in some more carotenoids and, you know, more like leafy greens and vibrant colors in there, because those are good for you. And they really need that. I know that there's other dysphagia, which is not being able to swallow U-tubes, but not very many. So my dream is when people get discharged from hospital to be able to turn on Savory's channel and see how they should stock their pantry. How should they stock their kitchen? What are some tools that they can use that Alexis, you probably, and link up to Alexis's videos, because she's talking about how to work within a kitchen when you might have a disability. And frankly, a lot of people have strokes and they can't use one arm, right?
Absolutely. A lot of my viewers actually have, like, you know, half body paralyzed or something, an issue with one part of their body for a number of reasons, not just amputation.
Exactly. I mean, that stroke population is huge. Right?
Absolutely.
And and they, you know, it could be an answer, could be, well, my spouse is going to do all the cooking and cleaning from now on, and I've been doing it for 50, 60 years, and now I have an excuse. So, like, right on. But, you know, a lot of times people will have to be alone and not have that support and need to learn how to manage and cope so they don't become malnourished, right?
Yeah, this is actually a great segue to our third topic, because Drew Prindle, actually, you came up with this topic idea. There are so many interesting innovations in kitchen tools these days. New types of countertop ovens. I think that innovators are just redefining what it means to cook and making cooking accessible to a lot more people. So I'd love to hear what you've been reading about and thinking about lately, Drew. Yeah,
absolutely. So I went to this thing a couple months ago. It was called the Smart Kitchen Summit, and it was basically like a miniature CES, like Consumer Electronics show. It was like that, but specifically focused on like kitchen technology. And it was so cool because there were so many things that they kind of just, it was like you were saying, they make it a little bit more accessible, because I think, Alexis, you touched on this earlier about, you know, how cooking, like the Food Network, everybody kind of makes it seem like a really formal thing that you have to have all the right tools for.
Very perfectionist.
Yeah. And like very professional, and like it's only the realm of these, like, you know, superstar chefs. But then there's all of these new tools that are allowing people to cook really, really good food, but without having to have, like, you know, 8 years of French culinary experience. So to give you one example, there's this thing called sous vide, and it's basically a sous vide machine that allows you to cook proteins through the sous vide method and get them really, really nice and tender and juicy without like drying out. But then it sears the top, and it's also paired with like a meal kit service. So they're actually sending you all of the stuff that you need to make it. So it takes like a ton of the guesswork and learning out of the whole process, and like brings really, really good, healthy food to a lot of people who might just be, I mean, I don't want to say lazy, but just it might be a little bit too daunting for them to get into that. So that was one that I thought was pretty cool. And you see that kind of stuff just across the board. There's so many clever ways that people are simplifying the process of cooking food and just making it easier so it's not so daunting. I guess another one, let's see here. There's also this thing I saw on Kickstarter like a couple years ago. It's called Pantelligent. It's like a little frying pan it has a bunch of sensors in it, and it connects to your phone, and you just program into it like, hey, I'm cooking a chicken breast right now. And it'll tell you like, okay, here's how hot you need to get it. Like it'll communicate with you when you need to flip it and kind of guide you through the process of just cooking something right. And it's not so much a thing that'll like tell you how to cook every time, but it's more of like a training tool. Like, we'll teach you how to do it this one time, and then in the future you won't have to use, you know, the smart pan again.
That is so cool.
Yeah, and there are just tons of these ideas, and I absolutely love it, because I think before there was always the choice between like, okay, you either cook it yourself and you have a bunch of effort that you have to dump into it, or you just go out and get it somewhere else. So you have this choice, this hard line choice between like lots of work or just pure consumption and like not really being part of the process of making your own food. But now we're kind of filling in the gap between those two. Like you don't necessarily have to cook everything from scratch anymore. You can get like a meal kit service and you don't have to do the grocery shopping or think of the recipes or even like figure out how to put all the ingredients together. They kind of do that for you. You're just like the middleman who's kind of doing a few of the steps. And that just makes eating healthily a little bit more accessible to more people.
Yeah, there was another, I think you sent a link earlier about a blender that does cooking. No, yeah, a blender that cooks too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, or was it? It was an Instant Pot that's also a blender.
That's right, Instant Pot blender. So I saw that and I was just like,
less cleaning.
Crap. Less cleaning, but also like for someone navigating the kitchen with, who's down a limb without a hand, whenever I'm transferring hot stove things to the sink or to the colander or, pouring soup into a blender, it's always touch and go. Like, it's always just like, okay, I'm gambling my life right now. And like to not have to do those hot transfers.
Oh my God. I can barely do that with two hands. When you pick up a big
Yeah.
pot with hot liquid in it. Oh my gosh.
Exactly. You're just down a little extra protection. So I love that example. It looks really cool. I might look into it.
Yeah, I think we're very much in kind of like a renaissance for like cooking gear right now because they're kind of just breaking boundaries right now. It's not, before it was you have a range, so you have a stove and an oven, maybe a microwave, some pots and pans and knives, and that's kind of really where it ended. Maybe a crock pot. But there are so many other options now that are like, you can find a gizmo for whatever food you're into, and it'll make cooking that specific thing a little bit easier. And it's just exciting to see where it's going to go because it's going to change things. It's going to, it might even change just how we approach food in general.
Well, and I love how it ties into what we've been talking about today because there is that social ritual of cooking and getting back to our earlier topics, there are some people for whom cooking is very just physically difficult. And I can just see how this could enable someone who was a lifelong cook to just enjoy the process. But, it would just be a little bit simplified and require fewer steps. Wow.
I wonder what how the education's going to go. Like, you have this is accessible. If you're not savvy and going to, going to the conference, like how do you make that more accessible to people at home?
Yeah, how do you spread the word?
How do you spread the word?
Yeah,
like
I think it's
Instant Pot.
That's what I was just going to bring that up. I think it's more of like, whether or not it catches on.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of the litmus test is like, is this practical enough for enough people and cheap enough? And
right.
So there's a lot of weird cutting edge stuff that's probably never really going to make it into a lot of people's homes. But in the case of Instant Pot, I think it's a great example of something that's just so practical, so great, so
easy.
multifunctional and easy.
I love it so much.
It is so popular, and it's popular for a reason because it simplifies something and it makes good cooking more accessible. So I think as long as there are more of those innovations and devices coming through that kind of hit that sweet spot, those are going to be the ones that make it through.
I don't know about you guys, but I have a lot of innovations that end up in garage sales for me. Like you're, for every 4 or 5 you buy, you're going to have one that's stellar, like your Instant Pot. And so it really is a bit of an adventure.
And some of these things are quite expensive, I think.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the ones that are, they're kind of produced by startups and they've been crowdfunded, so they don't have a ton of money, so they can't really mass produce the stuff. So it ends up costing, multiple hundreds of dollars. But just the fact that they're kind of pushing the boundaries of what cooking can do is exciting for me. Like, I think they're kind of just breaking the mold of what cooking appliances can be. And I think just that in and of itself is valuable.
Yeah, and Reva and I were talking earlier about kitchen design and, the fact that microwaves are always mounted up on the top cupboard where, someone in a wheelchair couldn't reach.
Really weird.
And, how hard is it to open an oven door? And the idea of a small steam oven that just sits on your counter and does everything, that sounds, I if I was in a situation where it was impossible to open an oven door or a microwave door, I think I'd be willing to to splurge on that. It sounds like a life changer.
Yeah, honestly, just for the kitchen space, if I could get rid of my oven for something smaller and more compact that does the same stuff, I'd do that in a heartbeat.
Well, and like this is a bit of a side note, but actually there are a lot of, in Canada at least I can speak to, but there are, government supports and little grants that people with disabilities can access to help to fund some of these things to make their homes more accessible. So yeah, they do cost money, but there are sometimes some great financial assistance that can be accessed. I think if people do some digging, for sure.
Oh yeah, that's a good
It'd
point.
be super cool to have the innovation help people that are disabled, but also make things faster for people that aren't disabled. Then your market is huge, right?
So
then you can go from a startup situation and actually get a lot more traction, drop down the cost of it, that kind of thing. So
they can help everybody.
Yeah, because I have a background in cooking, so it's not the question of being daunting. It's a question of having 2 children and being having 2 full-time jobs and really wanting to go totally beautiful with 7 days a week of wonderful cooking, but kind of going to the local grocery store and seeing, can I just get that chicken and just like throw a salad together and just be done? Because it's more about the next thing that you have to do, which is a bit of a tragedy of society, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, my weeknight dinners for my children are definitely tragedies. Tragedies composed by Trader Joe's.
A little mini tragedy found in the freezer aisle.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. You do what you got to do.
Yeah, I think as long as you're cooking and you're not, going out and getting some sort of fast food thing, you're ahead of the game for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I think it's time to move on to our dessert course, and that's where we each go around and share something fun that we've been enjoying this week that has to do with food and beverage. I'll go first. There's a new film out called A Fine Line. It's from director and producer Joanna James, and I just watched the trailer, and now I'm dying to see the whole thing. It explores why less than 7% of head chefs and restaurant owners are women, when traditionally women have always held the central role in the kitchen, and more than half of the graduates of culinary schools are women. And it's a documentary that interviews a number of successful female chefs, and it looks engaging and fun, and it looks like a really good film. So you can check out the trailer at afinelinemovie.com. Alexis, do you have a dessert item for us?
Well, I have been making a lot of vegan eggs lately, and I'm really thrilled with them. I have an episode on my channel I put out a couple weeks ago, and you might think like, vegan eggs? What? Excuse me? Hello? But they're really, really good. They're made out of squash and calamac, which is like a black salt that tastes like eggs. And they are made out of things that you would have no association with eggs, but they look just like a real fried egg. And I have been eating them nonstop. Like, they are absolutely incredible. So if you want to blow away your vegan friends at a breakfast, brunch party or whatever, highly recommend trying them out. They're super simple and really, really lovely.
Okay, Alexis, I have questions. So when you say vegan eggs, like, it sounds like you're talking about just like eggs as a dish. Do you like a fried egg? Can you use them? Can you use this also as like a binder in cooking? Like, say if you had to make like.
No, these ones would be like, there's lots of vegan egg replacements that you can use, like flax.
Yeah, I've made flax eggs a number of times. Yeah.
Yeah, these are like the dish of its own. So like, it looks just like a fried egg with the whites and the yolk. So this is like a standalone vegan egg that I put on burgers, salads. I make like hash, like, just so good.
No way. Do you have a recipe for this on your channel?
You need to have this on your YouTube.
Okay, I'm definitely going to check this out. This sounds awesome.
Yeah, I adapted it from another YouTuber I really love, and I linked it on my channel. It's just a couple weeks ago. It's a good time. Highly recommend.
I'm so intrigued.
Yeah. People get kind of scared when they see pictures online. They're like, those are vegan eggs? And I'm like, yep, because they look so real.
Oh my gosh.
That is cool.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, Drew, what did you bring for dessert today?
All right. So for dessert this time, I actually want to talk about something that this show actually put me onto. I was listening to some older episodes, and you brought up a book called 6 Seasons by Joshua McFadden. Oh my God. I went and picked it up at Powell's, and that has got to be the coolest cookbook I have ever purchased. It's amazing. So for anybody who hasn't seen this thing, it's a cookbook from this guy in Portland. He's a chef and a farmer. He owns Ava Jeans. And he wrote this book. It's about just basically how to eat seasonally. And he breaks down the seasons not to like the traditional 4 that we have, but into 6 of them, and kind of builds this book through what's in season and encourages you to live with the seasons and eat what's fresh. And as a result, can't speak. As a result of doing that, your cooking is just going to be better because all of those flavors are just naturally better when you eat them at the optimal time.
And what's really cool about that book is that it's not just Portland ingredients.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to the Portland Saturday market to get it. My friend in Ottawa, Canada, she said, "Have you heard about this book? I think you should get it." And I'm like, yeah, I have that book. And so in Ottawa, she can make that amazing food.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Check it out if you haven't heard of it before.
I love this coming from the digital guy because it's such an analog book. It's like sketches. I don't even think they have photos, do they?
No, they do. There's
they do.
beautiful pictures.
Okay.
I mean, the cover is just like sketches and stuff.
Yeah,
but
that's what I'm remembering.
Yeah, it's really good. I use it as a coffee table book because it's just so beautifully done as a cookbook.
It is beautiful, yeah. And the co-author, Martha Holmberg, has been a guest a couple times on this show.
Wow.
Yay. So, Reva, what did you bring for dessert today?
Well, I'm going to be the oddball. I'm going to talk a little bit about the dessert that I'm going to have. And that is someone that it was part of this process of innovation. He had head and neck cancer, has head and neck cancer, and his name is Ernie. And he said to me, if you can make something that I can have with my family when my grandchildren are watching a movie and they're eating popcorn, so that I don't have to have a pudding when they're having popcorn. So I'm in development of popcorn, and I can't wait to give it to Ernie so that he can have it with his family.
So, question: How do you make popcorn dissolve better and kind of be easier to swallow?
I have a patent kind of on it.
She can't tell you.
Tell us what you can.
I can tell you in a year. But yeah, it's really about getting a foam matrix and getting the corn flavors in there. And I just talked to this PhD in flavor, and he just blew me away. He's like, well, the real reason why it's hard to get popcorn is because it's an ester. And so he was just telling me all of the details of why it's so hard to make something taste and smell like popcorn. But we're going to get there.
That is incredible.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh,
so cool.
What a lovely note to end the show on. This has been such a fun episode. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, amazing panelists. Dr. Reva Barewal, clinical assistant professor at OHSU, French culinary chef, and founder of Savories, a new line of snacks and comfort foods for those who have difficulty chewing and swallowing.
Thank you very much.
And surgeon, I forgot to mention. All those things. And Alexis Hillyard, beaming in from Alberta, Canada. And people can tune into your cooking adventures on YouTube. And is it just stumpkitchen.com? Is that your URL?
You got it. Yeah.
So everyone should definitely check it out and look for that vegan egg.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Tutorial. That sounds great. And Drew Prindle, senior features editor at Digital Trends. Thanks for being back here. It's always fun to have you.
It's a blast.
Today's episode was recorded in the high-fiber, protein-packed city of Portland, Oregon at the studios of OPB. Our editor is Keelan King, who also composed our new theme music, so I hope you like it. Izzy Kramer is our assistant producer. Our audio engineer today was Nalene Silva. Special thanks to sound supervisor Stephen Cray and the web staff of OPB, who bring our show to life on the Oregon Public Broadcasting website. And you can check out our own website, thefourtop.org, to learn more about us, listen to back episodes, and reach out to us on social media. We really love hearing from you. And if you've not already subscribed to our show, please do on iTunes, NPR One, or Spotify. All right, everybody, goodbye.